Welcome to Choose the Nickel. I'm your host, George Bailey. My co-founder and technical support is the gorgeous Christina Bailey. This podcast is about giving kids financial freedom. We're interviewing fascinating people for their insights about how children learn to be financially savvy. Our guests come from diverse, sometimes conflicting schools of thought, and we love the opportunity to learn from them. We encourage all to weigh our guests' ideas on how to help children thrive, both financially and in general. We invite you to visit our website at www.choosethenickel.com, subscribe to our newsletter, and try out the things we are learning on the podcast. Our next episode features Zach Dockman, the president of Retirement Planning Specialists Group, or RPSG, the preeminent financial planning firm specializing in company retirement plans and owner transitions. His true passion is helping people get a significantly better understanding of money and what it means to them. When he's not working, his amazing family, books, movies, and love of cooking eat up most of his time. He has built a fun life for himself. The opinions voiced in this podcast episode are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities are offered through FSC Securities Corporation, member FINRA and SIPC. Investment advice offered through Retirement Planning Specialist Group, a registered investment advisor. Retirement Planning Specialist Group and Zach Dockman are separate entities from FSC Securities Corporation. Ladies and gentlemen, Zach Dockman. Zach Dockman, welcome to the show.
Thank you, George. Pleasure to be with you.
It's great to have you on again. So a little bit of, I'm going to be honest with the listener. What is this? Number 3, number 1, you didn't like. Recording number 1, you didn't like. It was out with that one. It's only the best for Zach Dockman. Number 2, we lost. And, so that's on us.
I like this we thing.
By we, I mean my wife and I. So I'm not going to throw you under the bus. This is the Throw Zach Dockman under the bus episode.
It's Marriage 101.
Marriage 101. All right. So my first question for you, Zach, is can you tell me your favorite or most proud professional accomplishments?
Yeah, I absolutely can. I can give you 3 of them. One is the fact that I made it, because this business as a financial planner is really hard to make it in. I built a book big enough after 5 years to go independent. And I thought that was really, really cool, considering I'm not from here. I didn't know anybody here 7 years ago when I moved here. And I literally built a practice from scratch, from people I never knew in my life to here. The second thing I'm the most proud of is all the people I've been able to help in my life understand money better. It's just one of those things that we spend so much of our time working for, yet we know almost nothing about it. And so what I tell people is I will teach you more about money in 1 hour than you've learned in your entire life. And it's really helped a lot of people. The last thing is the confidence that I've been able to give people going forward in their lives. I think the work that I've done has really changed the course of people's lives. And that to me is just really, really cool. I've been able to give back.
Isn't that what we all want out of our work? Like, we really want to change people's lives. You know, we want to do something good.
I think of all the people in my life who have helped me get to where I am. You know, my way of repaying that is going out and helping other people. You know, even if I just change their life by a millimeter, making them laugh for the day, or, you know, changing the way they see money or their relationships. It's just, you know, whatever that is, just always maintaining a positive attitude and, you know, just trying to help people. And, you know, that to me is how I give back.
Excellent. You're a big reader, and we've talked a little bit about this, that you're really into financial literature. Which can be very daunting for some people, I think.
It is so boring, some of it. I honestly need therapy.
But
it's not because of what I read.
Have you considered reading a good book about therapy?
Yes, I actually read some Tony Robbins. Until Tony Robbins started doing financial stuff, I always thought he wrote some pretty good informational stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
But I study a lot of behavioral finance too, which it's just interesting in how we think and how our mind works and how we process things. And, you know, I was listening to someone the other day, and I don't remember who it was, and they talked about your past doesn't really affect who you are. And I actually agree with it in their argument. I looked at it differently, but I'd always just said it's how you process the experiences you've had. I mean, I've a crazy growing up story compared to, some people. And although I am far, far, far from normal, I guess I processed it a lot differently than I think a lot of other people will.
Before we get back into books, and that's where I want to go, I want you to just give us a quick overview. You said, you had a crazy upbringing. Give me a snapshot of that background and maybe include in there the things that you learned about money during that background, during that upbringing.
My parents were divorced before I was born. My mother didn't know she was pregnant when she left my father after 7-8 years of marriage. My father's a great man and he stayed in my life and he's still alive and he's still in my life. My mother remarried when I was 3 to a guy she was married to until I was about 12. It was an interesting relationship, but him and I are very close. He was a financial planner and he's the one who got my mother into the business as well. He was one of the most brilliant salespeople and investors I've ever met, and he taught me a lot about investing. And my mother was, just a preeminent financial planner. I was really, really fortunate in my background to have 2 people who really, really knew their stuff and were, passed a lot of that on to me. And so I learned a lot about money, especially what it's like to have it. And then after 1987 happened, we lost it. And then to have it again. And then my mother and stepfather divorced to literally have nothing again. I know what it's like to have. I know what it's like to lose. I've done it in my personal and professional lives as well. Just having a different perception of what money is and what it means to me.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned on your stepdad's side, I find it very interesting that he was able to have an influence on you and to, that you felt comfortable following in his footsteps in terms of becoming a financial professional. What is it about him that allowed that to happen?
As much as anything, it was I wanted to go to work with him and it just didn't work out. After I graduated college, he wound up selling his practice. My mother stayed in the financial planning industry for years later and in fact just recently retired. Her influence was as much as anything. My stepfather taught me a lot about investing, but my mother's influence on planning, and if you ask any decent financial planner or actually any relevant financial planner in this industry, our job is way more about planning now than it is about investing. What I love to impart on people is we're in the business of ing, which means doing. Now, we don't put a plan in place because plans get destroyed the minute that they're put together. We have to constantly stay forward looking. And my mother was amazing at that and was amazing at teaching me how to do that. So I'm forever grateful. I'm forever grateful for all 3 of my parents. They've been just tremendous influences on my life. And, I feel very fortunate that I had 3 parents, and even though my parents have married a few more times since then. But hey, good for them. So
keep on bringing in the good people,
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about books, and because I feel like it's good for all of us. We don't all have the time to read financial planning books or,
nor should you, for the love of God.
Oh, yeah. We don't all have the time to read books all the time that are about money, but you have found a lot of time to be able to do that. Do you remember your first book that you read about money?
No, but I'm sure Think and Grow Rich is one of the first ones, just because of the influence Napoleon Hill had on, so many people. And I know I read that younger, The Greatest Salesman in the World. A lot of the first books I read that were professional, that weren't just for fun. I've always enjoyed reading. But
let's stop with Think and Grow Rich. If you could give me like the best gem out of that book.
The biggest thing of Think and Grow Rich was just, keeping your eyes focused on where you're going and writing down your goals. And that's been a practice anyone who knows me knows that I have stuck with for years. Most successful people I read about, they write their goals down. I read Emmett Smith once said, then he got it from a coach, When you write your goals down, it's a plan, but until that, it's just a dream.
Yeah.
So, and stuff like that. It's great. The reason I love reading is obviously it's a monologue, but how my thoughts start to work because of it. And I take notes, and anybody who's ever borrowed a book from me gets to realize all the thoughts I had because I write in every book I own. So they're hard to give away after.
I just started writing in my books.
There's no reason not to.
I fought that forever. Well, first of all, I'm super perfectionistic.
Totally.
I take a shower every day, and and I brush my teeth twice a day, and I keep everything clean. That's
you floss too.
I floss too. I do. Keep everything clean. And so when I look at a book and the idea of writing in a book is just, I can't. It is so hard to do that, but I've started doing it.
Did
and
you
it's
write
refreshing.
Your textbooks? When you were in college, did you
so
write in your
bad
textbooks?
at that. I was, even in my textbooks, I started in law school, being really aggressive about that because there's no way.
Right.
No way.
You can't remember everything. I mean, the biggest thing that we have to remember is you're just, even if it's just this great idea, and most of our best ideas happen in the shower. And there's all sorts of research behind it.
I have at least one good idea daily.
And Derek Weber at Go Brand Go turned me on to this notepad that goes in the shower. And Derek, I still need to order it. I can't wait to get it, but I think my wife's going to make fun of me for it, but I don't really care. Anyone who knows my wife and I knows that neither of us care what the other thinks. We love each other immensely, I promise you. It's the way to a happy marriage.
I've seen it. It's great.
When you're reading, you're going to get some great idea that either is part of the book or isn't, or you just go back and highlight it, write it down, because the more you write these things down, the better that you retain them. Because how many times in our lives, and I'm as guilty as anyone of this, of just having an amazing idea going, I'll get to it later, and coming back going, yep, nope, that's gone. We are so busy and there is so much noise just in our day-to-day lives and so much going on that even the best ideas go away. So just write it down instantly. So as I'm reading, I'm always writing into my books, and I can go back and read what I wrote. And then a lot of times I'll underline that area too and go, okay, so why did I think this there? And as much as anything, I don't want to have to read a book more than once, although there are some that I do, because I just want to keep reading and I want other ideas and I want to see what happens. And, some people may have a different philosophy, and that's totally great too. It doesn't make me right. And if I could ever teach anybody something, one of my favorite things to impart upon people is just because you believe it doesn't make you right. And I mean it seriously, because why do you believe what you believe, or what got you to that place of where you believe that? And I'm not saying this isn't an attack on something very specific.
I understand. This is about how we think. And one of the biggest things that I got out of law school that was very powerful for me, even before law school when I was studying for the LSAT, you start breaking down assumptions, right? And you realize that underlying any given belief, and we're not just, politics, religion, whatever it is, any belief is an underlying assumption. Mm-hmm. And you have to respect that.
Absolutely. Now try dealing with people's money. Because,
oh my goodness.
Frankly, I mean, next to our own personal health, I don't think we're more attached to anything. I mean, for most people, they spend a vast majority of their day trying to earn it. They have zero idea how to keep it, less of an idea how to multiply it, and really no idea what the heck to do with it. It just becomes, you go back to beliefs and rules of thumb and thoughts. And so we talked about earlier how my upbringing was crazy, but how I processed it might have been different than someone else who would have processed it differently than I did. It was just my experience through it. When it comes to reading, I mean, you asked me what the first book I read or the most important book, and it was, I write everything down so I can go back to that experience. And I don't look backwards. I'm not a historian. I love history, but I'm not a historian. But why did I have that thought? And where's that going to go for me? Because I read a lot and I take the time to read because, frankly, I get paid to read. I have the coolest job in the world for me personally because I get paid for knowledge. And so I might as well go get as much as I possibly can so I can justify my worth.
Right now, you are reading, you said 3 or 4 books probably more than that. I know that I'm reading probably 6 or 7 at any given time.
Yeah.
You know,
I think you guys want a great book. It's called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. She was awesome. She was a pro poker player and just a brilliant, brilliant person. A lot of where I've been reading is behavioral finance. Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. I had to reread again. Yep. That's
but go back to still, I'm not going to let you scoot on to the next book before you at least give me something about this Thinking in Bets book. Okay. I like the title already.
So Annie Duke was a professional poker player and she was great. And she talked a lot about just thinking in statistics. If I do this, how will this result? If I do this, but the thing I got out of it more than anything, and it's a poker player term, but I think we can all apply it to life. And this is one of the parts, but it was personally my favorite, was called resulting. And we talk a lot about this with investing or anything, is we make a decision based on, as Bill Clinton said, and yes, burn me, half the people listening to this.
Maybe even 3/4.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't care how again, every politician's great and every politician's evil. Okay, every politician's just evil. Anyways, block that out. Yeah. But Bill Clinton had a great saying, and he said, you take the facts as you find them. And so I generally believe, not always, but generally believe we make the best decisions with the facts that we have in front of us or based on the knowledge that we have at the time. And so just because you make the decision based on the best information that you have, or you do something that's always worked and it doesn't work, and all of a sudden the result didn't work, it's like, well, what's wrong with me? And it's called resulting. And it's, sometimes our results are just out of our hands, but you just have to keep doing the right things and the odds go in your favor. I love that. And I love that thought because, anybody who's in sales, especially for those in sales, like you will do something that works until it doesn't. And then you're going to start looking around going, why doesn't this work any longer? Or, there was a girl at Starbucks, and this is probably one of my favorite stories recently. Her name is Sarah. She is awesome. She's one of my favorite people. I see her every morning. She was telling me about, and she's very young, 23. She's a college student, obviously doesn't have any money working or doesn't make a lot of money working at Starbucks. And she was talking about how her Apple computer broke and she had Apple Care. She went to the store and they weren't going to fix it because she didn't have the right screen for her Apple Care. And I said, that's the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. And she goes, yeah, the person wouldn't fix it, wouldn't do it for me. I said, go back to the store and go find the next person. Because one of the things we have to remember is when someone says no to us, whether it's our spouse, whether it's somebody else, whether they're rude to us one day, whatever it is, what was going on in their life at that moment that made them make that decision? And sometimes just go back a second time. I mean, any of us who have kids, our kids know if they just ask us enough times, we're just going to say yes. It's just,
you're weak.
Just eventually, because we all crack. I mean, like, we can't help it. We're human.
You probably crack earlier than
I do. I'm actually the worst about it. I'm like, no. I'm stubborn about it because I don't want my kids to think it, but also I don't want to constantly say no to my kids because I want them to have the experiences. But she went back. And so I saw her yesterday and she's like, you're right. I found a different person who helped me through this. And I said, as much as anything, it was, and it goes back to that resulting. Just because we didn't get the result, we want to go back and do it again. Just because, and you may go back to the same salesperson the next day and say, hey, you and I talked yesterday. This is what you'd said to me. I want to make sure that I understand. So I get it. And they could have been having a bad day.
Yeah.
They could have been the 5th person that day who's just didn't work. Whatever it is, it ain't personal. And just keep going and what you believe and then study it. Look at what worked. Look at what didn't. We have to do this with investing. I have to do this at every client meeting. Not every investment I've made has worked out. I promise you, I've got some nasty losers, Eastman Kodak. I've had some great winners that shouldn't have been winners. I had some that I missed on. A client called me and begged me to buy Tesla. Begged me. And now this client works at NASA. So he is significantly smarter than me. I understand. He begged me to buy Tesla and I begged him not to and he didn't do it. Although he is over that fact. It's not the ones,
that's a kindness.
Well, look, we're going to be wrong, but I always tell people when it comes to investing, and I steal this from Warren Buffett. Pablo Picasso said, good artists borrow, great artists steal. Yes. And so if it's good enough for Picasso, it's good enough for me. Buffett talked a lot about, it's not the ones that you swing at or don't swing at that go up. It's the ones that you swing at and hit that go down. Don't worry about the pitches you miss. Just don't. You just have to buy enough of the right thing. And so
what you do buy, by all means, understand.
Absolutely.
And have confidence in that.
Yeah.
Got it.
So let's say you want to talk about investing, and we'll get back to reading. But when it comes to investing, most people have zero idea what they're buying. Almost none. And most people have even less an idea what it's costing them to buy. If I can teach anybody anything, it's understand where your money is going and understanding a term called opportunity cost. And then there's a whole bunch of other behavioral finance
Give us
things.
that definition. I know what opportunity cost is. I use it every day.
Oh.
I use it with my kids now, and they're probably going to be like, huh? But I want, for the sake of that's what my kids sound like.
We start to sound like the teacher from Peanuts after a while. I know. So, but
give us a definition.
So I'll give it as the best example. I was meeting with a husband and wife the other day. And they want to buy a house. They're 20 some years old. They want to buy a house. And so they're just up and coming. One day these two are going to be rock stars in terms of their finance. The husband is on that trajectory. Some of us are lucky. The rest of us actually had to work. But we talked about, if you buy this house, what do you have to give up to buy a house today? Because your income is fixed. So that means there's going to be an extra $600 a month coming out of your account. Do you have the room for safety? And she just looked at me and I said, what else could you do with that $600 every single month? And then you have to remember, when you own a house and something breaks, you have to fix it. And you have to remember, taxes aren't fixed. Insurance isn't fixed. Things are going to break in your house. When you look at what else you could do with that $600 because you are on such a thin margin. So the opportunity cost is, if I do this, what do I have to give up? What is this costing me? If I put $600 a month away for the next 5 years instead of buying that house, what does that give me? 7,200 times 5, it's $36,000. And then let that invest over the course of 20 years. Where would you be instead? And then think of what kind of house you could buy and what kind of safety you could have. It's, if I have a $4 a day latte habit, and I don't believe in it just for what it's worth, because I go and buy my wife Starbucks every morning at 6 a.m. Hence how I know Sarah. But, what are you giving up by doing that? So opportunity cost means, if I'm spending something on this, energy, time, money, what am I not spending my time doing? If I'm napping at work, what am I not doing? Even if you're working at work, what are you not doing? Right.
Yeah.
And so the biggest opportunity cost of all, and why it's so important for people to understand money and what to do with it, is we spend more of our time at work, for most of us do, than any other place. And I promise you, for most people, there's a million things they'd rather be doing than working. What is the opportunity cost you are giving up by not investing your money and handling it wisely? Because we are going to live longer than we planned and need more money than we think. And so what are we actually going to do about it? And so most people spend their money like there is no tomorrow. They get it, they just spend it. And then they invest their money like there was no yesterday. Like they've just never understood history. Oh, this will be fine. We got it. People just don't understand. So I do a lot of 401k work, and I just sit with employees, and the greatest gift of all for me is to watch that light bulb moment happen. And it's always at a different place, but where they just see, oh, now I understand all the things I didn't. It doesn't mean I can fix it today, but at least now I'm aware, which means I'm going to go home and screw up and eat 2 Sundays. So as one of my favorite stories of all is my stepfather. We went to Dairy Queen one day. And I was pretty young, and he ordered 2 hot fudge sundaes. So I looked at him, and I didn't want a hot fudge sundae. I wanted something else. He's like, no, we're getting 2 hot fudge sundaes. So he gets it and I get it. And I looked at him and I'm like, well, what's the deal? He goes, well, the doctor told me eat half of what I order.
There's a loophole everywhere.
Yeah. But
everywhere. That's great.
He had thought that most people don't think about what they're going to do. As Bertrand Russell said, man would rather die than think. And most do.
Yeah.
So the point of opportunity cost which got lost somewhere, is if you're doing something, what are you giving up to do that?
Yeah.
If you're going to spend money on this vacation, are you taking away medicine for your 50-year-old, 60-year-old self by buying this vacation for your 30-year-old self? And does that matter?
My next question, we're still on books, and I've actually got, I think, 3 more book questions left.
Go ahead.
And you're going to hate the first one.
No, I don't hate questions.
What is your favorite book on finance?
Favorite book on finance? That's a great question. I don't know if
you
I
don't
have
hate that question. Okay, good.
I don't know if I have a favorite book on finance. I've loved a lot of them. I suffer from recency bias a lot.
Yeah.
Because I think of what I've recently read. So I'm going to give an answer in 2 parts here. One that benefited me the most and one that benefited my clients. I think my relationship with my clients the most. And the first one is the one that benefited my relationship with clients the most that I loved was a book by a guy named Bill Bacharach, who wrote a book called Values-Based Financial Planning. It just gave a great structure for me to go out and meet with clients. And I always had a really good process, like I said, from my parents. And I have a process that I can explain well, but it just really, I felt like I connected better with clients after I read that book. So I think
give me the core of that book.
It gave me the first 5 questions that I felt like I was missing. And it always started off with, what is important about money to you? And it really just gave, out of everything else in that book, that was what I walked away with, was that question. And that question, I feel like, really enhanced my relationship with my clients.
Did it make you a better listener?
Absolutely. Anybody who knows me knows that I love to talk. Obviously, you can listen to me.
Yeah.
But the one thing I did to become a better listener, I started to listen to books on tape. And one of the goals, or Audible, I'm sorry, I get to play old man sometimes. I listen to audible.com, and anybody who knows me, I crank through these books. And it also helps me get through a lot more. But one of the rules I had for myself from the beginning was I was never allowed to go back unless I wanted to take a note on something, which meant that no matter what I was doing, I had to listen to it. And so it made me a significantly better listener, because most of us are listening so we can figure out what we're going to say. And that is such a mistake, because then what we wind up having is parallel conversations and we get nowhere.
There's an opportunity cost there.
Oh, absolutely. So most people just feel like they want to be heard. I mean, why I think people like working with me is I'm willing to listen. I mean, I think I do a good job of it. I feel like it. I work hard for it. So my favorite book that helped me with clients was definitely Bill Bacharach's Values-Based Financial Planning. One of my favorite books just personally on finance was Against the Gods by Peter Bernstein. And it was just a story of risk. And it just talked a lot about how risk and people understood risk and the different parts of risk. And so I just found it very, very interesting. And then I find anything that Daniel Kahneman did phenomenal. He wrote Thinking Fast and Slow. He's got his proteges, Richard Thaler, and who wrote Nudge and Misbehaving. And another book, I think any investor, if I could recommend any book to an investor, if you're going to put any money in the market at all, the quote unquote market, you have to quote that because it's such a broad and useless term. But if you're going to put any of your money into the public markets, everybody has to read Howard Marks' The Most Important Thing. I don't think that there is a better book written. Period.
I've heard you mention that one before. What is the most important thing? Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Okay, everybody, spoiler alert. Go ahead.
The most important thing? Well, that's the funny thing about it is, so the reason why Howard Marks called that book The Most Important Thing, oh my God, I want to say there were 17 or 18 and now I don't remember. He would always say, and the most important thing is this, and the most important thing is this. But there's a lot of things that are very, very important. And like I said, I think there's 17 or 18 chapters that the most important thing is. My favorite of all of his is what's called second level thinking. And what that says is, it's a great company, we should go out and buy it. And his thought is, everybody thinks it's a great company. They've probably already bought it. We should sell it because it's probably overvalued. Howard Marks, I'm probably not more grateful for anyone I've never met outside of Hunter Thompson than Howard Marks. And the reason why is he is so brilliant and he was willing to share his brilliance with the world in a way that was easy to understand and easy to read. I just think that if you're gonna read any book on investing, that one you just have to.
So now I want to play a game with you. Okay. And so I'm going to ask you to say the first 5 books that come to mind, and you're going to close your eyes while doing it because you have a bookshelf over here. And so just 5 books as fast as you can. Tell me what they are that you're thinking of right now.
The one I'm currently reading is called Dollars and Cents by Dan Ariely.
Okay, go on to the next. We're not going to stop and talk about
all right.
This
so
is like
just
stream
5
of
books.
consciousness.
Ed Easterling's, Ed Easterling wrote 2 books. They're both great. If you want to understand technical investing, not charting, but technical investing, Ed Easterling is just unbelievable. Books. I read so many of them. It's just crazy. Oh my God. Nicholas Taleb, Nassim wrote, Fooled by Randomness, which is just phenomenal as well. It might be the worst edited book you've ever read, but it's just such a great book in terms of beliefs. The book that really kicked me in the butt lately was, Relentless by Tim Grover. He was Michael Jordan's trainer. He was Kobe Bryant's trainer. He was Dwayne Wade's trainer. And if you've not read it, this guy is great. And one of the things that he talks a lot about thinking. I love books on thinking and how we think and why we think what we think and how to think about that, which is a lot of thinking, isn't it? So that was 4 books.
Don't think too much. You just got to throw it out.
Oh God. I'm just trying to think of what have I read lately that was great.
No, not even just throwing it credit. It can be like Danielle Steele.
My favorite book is still probably Rum Diaries by Hunter Thompson, and it's not his best book, but it's just the memory of when I read it. So I named my son Hunter after Hunter S. Thompson. So
nice. Oh, that's awesome.
I named my daughter Marley after Bob Marley. Okay. I have a sense of humor.
Do you want to hear my 5 books?
Yeah.
Okay, so Fox and Socks, Frog and Toad, Where the Wild Things Are.
Love that one.
And that's
one
a great
of the greats.
One.
God, is that book amazing?
Okay, I'm trying to just throw these out, but you can tell where my mind is right now.
With the kids.
That
book, Where the Wild Things Are.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But Where the Wild Things Are, I've actually been thinking about Maurice Sendak, and I'm just like, it's really great. I mean, for me, it captures boyhood.
Yeah, God, that book is
very powerful way. Very powerful way.
It's funny. So my father's coming in town today. I haven't seen my father in a while, and he's coming in an hour. And when you said that book, whenever I think of that book, I think of my father reading to me that book as a child. Yeah, and that book is my childhood as much as anything. So that's awesome that you said that.
So now,
what one book changed your life?
Oh, thank you for asking me that. I would say, lately, I'll give you a long-term one and a lately one, because I agree that we all have this lately bias. My lately is pretty easy. It would be Family Wealth, Keeping in the Family by James Hughes Jr. I actually interviewed him for the podcast. He was episode 2. Great interview, powerful mind. And what was so powerful about it for me was that Jay has kind of really gotten into how wealth and the family work together, and how it's very hard to deal with money and the family dynamic, but he really puts together a great picture of how that's supposed to happen. And so the way that that's changed me is that I look at my own kids and I look at what I teach them about money and the biases I have about money and how that spreads to them. I also look at my own personality as being what he would call a kind of a first generation, a starter. I'm kind of more entrepreneurial, a risk taker in some ways. A very powerful book, and I would highly recommend it. A second book that influenced me a long time ago. That's really hard. Because I have read a lot of books, but I would have to say Les Miserables.
Wow.
And now that's not a money book at all.
You know, Les Miserables.
Yeah. It's just a beautiful story, very powerful. And for me, one of the things that is not covered in the musical, but is in the book, for those who've read it, is Marius's relationship with his father. And he tends to look down on his dad for a very long time and has this kind of conversion point where he sees that his dad is in fact a real hero. And it's very powerful, very beautiful. And, you know, I bring that up maybe in this context because I'm a parent and I want to do everything I can for my kids. And when I think of that book, I think of like, I want to be the type of dad. First of all, I want my kids to know immediately right now in the present that I'm a good dad. I don't know if I could say that, you know, but I definitely want them later on down the line to look at what I've been trying to do for them. Just, I hope they know that I'm trying to make sacrifices.
You know, your kids won't, I don't believe your kids will appreciate it now, but I think your kids will look back and see it. I think the biggest thing, if I give zero parenting advice. I give none. I always give people, well, part of it is like everybody who's about to have a baby, I always tell them two things. One, get as much sleep as humanly possible because until you've gone through, I don't care if you partied all the way through college. I don't care. Like you're just never, it's like so emotionally draining having a baby, the first one. And it's so tiring that just sleep as much as you can because you're just not used to having your sleep schedule that screwed up. And second, every single person you meet is going to have advice for you. Every single one of them is going to give you a piece of advice. Don't listen to any of it. You're going to figure it out, which is funny because I'm giving you advice right now. Well,
first of all, I don't endorse that view because my podcast is all about parenting advice, okay?
No, but this is solicited.
I'm just kidding.
I'm coming to, you know, but there's a difference is between solicited advice.
Yeah, that is
and
true.
Unsolicited advice. And most people love to give unsolicited. You know what that is?
I totally
It's called an opinion. And I don't want your opinions. You know, you will figure it out as much as anything. You'll figure it out. And what worked for me may not work for you, but sleep, be patient. And I heard this other thing. It actually came from the Annie Duke book, I think, was the 10-10-10 rule. Doesn't matter. And you could do this either way. It doesn't matter 10 minutes, 10 days or 10 months from now, or 10 days, 10 months, 10 years from now, whatever you want it to be. Will it matter in 10 minutes? No, it really won't.
And, you know, we've hit a common theme, and that is opportunity cost. And I think that is a great tool for evaluating, you know, your true opportunity cost. Now, back to your first remark about the sleep thing. I do agree with that. Actually, last night, it's funny you should say this. Last night, I dreamt that my kids were coming in and waking me up. And, you know, I was still sleeping. I was dreaming. And I woke up and I felt like crud.
Oh, our kid's great.
So I hear you on that whole sleep thing. Yeah. So I have one more question, and then we gotta end. What is your very favorite charitable cause? Maybe even specific organization.
My kids don't count.
Your kids don't count.
But my kids always say, "Give to my favorite nation donation." You know, to me, where I spend most of my time are kids' causes. I used to mentor in the city at a school called Frable until the program went away. I love helping kids as much as I can. And so that's where most of my charitable dollars go. That's where most of my effort goes. I'm looking at doing a little bit more with veterans as well, just because of how grateful I am for what they've sacrificed and how poorly I see a lot of them been treated. But yeah, any way to help people who could just use just the smallest bit of help to change the course of their lives, that's what I want to do. Why not? I mean, if you could change a life. Another book that I think everybody has to read is Make Your Bed by General, or by Admiral, what is it? General Admiral McCreary or McCleary.
Yeah.
Go look up Make Your Bed, buy it on Audible, and listen to him give that presentation. If it doesn't change your life, you need some help. I mean, seriously, that guy, I don't care how you feel about the military. I just don't. This is not a book on military. It's not a book on anything. It's just a book on attitude. And that guy is just awesome.
You know, it's funny. I realized that I do have one more question that I just can't let go of, because this is focused on, you know, us as parents, and I want parents to read because I want them to feel competent, because then they can, you know, explain these things to their kids maybe in more simplistic manner. Are there any kids finance books out there? Or anything that's kid oriented, or at least on, you know, parenting?
I mean, outside of what Stanley Fisher wrote? No, I mean, outside, no, I'm sorry. I shouldn't. Stephen Fisher. I take a cheap shot there. I apologize. Or outside of what? Oh God, what's her name? Orman. Susie Orman. Susie Orman. Oh, she's awful. Don't listen. Susie Orman, do not listen to her. I am telling you, she couldn't be more wrong. I feel the same way about Dave Ramsey. I think these guys are dangerous. David Bach, do not read this stuff. This is dangerous material. This is not honest. This is people trying to sell you crap. It is total, complete crap. I don't care if I'm cursing. Books for kids. You know, guy named Grant Cardone, who's a sales guy, who I think is great. And one of the best things he ever said is, work-life balance I don't believe in. I'm working to have a life. Like, good for you, man. Go show your stones. He's got a book called The Millionaire Booklet. I think that it's one of those things. You go buy it for like $2, I think, $2-3. It's a great way to explain to kids about money. Like, you don't have to like the guy, and I've turned him on to a bunch of people. Some people think he's just awful, and some people like him. I happen to like him personally. But he's got the right idea. I think of any of them, and it's not one that you would generally think of. His Millionaire Booklet, I think, is a great way to teach kids about money. There's no perfect one. My mother used to always ask her clients, what was money like when you were 10 years old? So there's something about the association when you're 10, you start to understand money more, or at least in her mind it was. And so I used to ask clients that. I don't ask as much as I used to because I found different questions I liked. But, you know, if you want to teach kids about money, there's two things you can do. One, learn about it yourself.
Yeah, and that's totally the gist of this interview.
Two, like, go find a great financial planner. And what a great financial planner means, really simple. If they're selling you products, that's not a solution. Let them explain the process to you. And I have a process, and this doesn't have to work for you or any other financial planners out there, but I always explain my process. First, understand your goals. Where are you going? Second, let's get cash flow in order. What is our cash flow? Because cash flow is really what's going to fund our goals. Then we get into the process. Our foundation, which is our estate planning and our life insurance or risk management for financial planners out there. So once we have the foundation, because guess what? Life can happen when we're least expecting it. Or as John Lennon said, life was what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. So you have your goals, where we're going. And they'll change all the time, but at least know where we're going so we can go in that direction. Our cash flow. How are we going to fund all of this? How do we create it? You've got to, my clients, it's a goal to save at least 20% of our income. My goal is to get to 40% of my income, because that's how we create security. You know, and I'll go back to quoting Grant Cardone, the middle class is failing. It's dying. You got to go beyond it. $1 million doesn't mean anything. So you get your cash flow, you get your foundation with your will and your trust and your life insurance, which is your risk management, because all the success in the world can go away in a heartbeat if something goes wrong. The next part we look at is our taxes, and the tax code changed. It's much more beneficial for us making money, except for financial planners and insurance people and some others who got screwed. Doesn't matter. It's not what you make. It's what you keep. Remember, if you write the word the IRS together, you know what that spells? Theirs.
I've never heard that.
It's great, isn't it?
That's catchy.
And then Tom Gow came up with that, or Tom Gow showed me that one day. He's a brilliant financial planner. And then the last thing you got to look at is your investments. Understand your investments. What are you paying for them? What do you own? And I deal a lot in correlations. That's how I create success. And so it doesn't work. Everybody's kind of got a different thing. Are indexes the best way to go? I'm not always sure. I'm not totally sold on that. I would come back and do a podcast on indexing versus active management and be willing to argue with anyone, because I believe in my argument so soundly against just index investing. I'm not saying it's totally bad, but I think that you need to open your eyes to what it is. So I'll leave you on this when it comes to the cost of it. And then we'll get back to parenting, and then I'll let you go, is if you have a $300,000 portfolio in a 401k, you're probably spending about $330 a month in just your cost. Now think of how many things that you spend $330 a month on. Now think of what service you want for that. How much are you getting for that in your 401k or from your wealth manager who's charging you 1%? Know what you're spending. And so once you get that under control, so if your financial planner has to be able to explain that process to you, if they're just pitching you products, buy this mutual fund because it's going to, no investment is going to fix your life. No life insurance product is going to fix your life. Most of you should only own term insurance. You put that in there. I don't care. Most of us, 95% of us only need term. Leave that. Understand it. If it's complicated life insurance, you don't want it. You don't need it. Anybody wants to argue with me, you can come to my office. I'll do it publicly with you. So once you understand it, sit down with your kids once a month. Show them the bills. Don't be afraid of that. Show them how cash flow works. Help them understand. You don't want to give them an allowance? Fine. Help them earn money somehow so they can understand it.
I was just listening to, I want to say Sharon Eberson. I want to say her name is Eberson. In any case, she's the same. She says, I talk with my kids so much about money, like in terms like in plain language and about every detail of my spending. I'm not sure where I sit on that yet because I haven't given it sufficient thought, but I'm developing my ideas on that.
Young.
Yeah. So I do talk with my kids about money though.
But it's understanding, so like my kids get birthday or Christmas presents. And it's, you look at them or whatever, Hanukkah, I'm Jewish, I shouldn't say Christmas, but they are Christmas. So like my son got $50 for his birthday from my father and he wanted to go buy baseball cards. So if you go buy baseball cards, we go back to opportunity costs. What are you going to give up? But he also wants a bank account with money in it. And so we talk about it and he's 8 and it's not really registering, but it's starting to. It goes back to the Stanford marshmallow test. Do I want something now or do I want a lot more later? And so if we could teach our kids anything, it's understanding the value of a little bit of patience, because we all suffer from it too. We're in such a microwave society that we want everything now. And it doesn't work that way, because after enough nows, guess what you're going to have? Nothing.
Zach, thank you so much. This has been awesome. And I hope that, the listeners have really picked up on a lot of first of all, some great advice, but second of all, really great list of books. Go out and read, everybody. Thank you so much, Zach.
Yeah, thank you.
Everybody else, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the interview and found useful ideas about things you can do with your kids. Be sure to check the show notes at www.choosethenickel.com for links to names, books, and other resources we discussed in today's show. Also, please subscribe to our newsletter and visit our contact page where you can give us feedback. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube, and you can follow Choose the Nickel on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We invite you to share Choose the Nickel with your friends and join us in our quest to teach kids financial freedom. The opinions voiced in this podcast episode are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities are offered through FSC Securities Corporation, member FINRA and SIPC. Investment advice offered through Retirement Planning Specialist Group, a registered investment advisor. Retirement Planning Specialist Group and Dockman are separate entities from FSC Securities Corporation.